History is filled with mysteries, tragedies, and events so disturbing that they almost feel fictional. Yet some of the darkest stories ever told are not myths, not urban legends, and not horror movie scripts. They are real events that happen to real people. These stories remind us that reality can sometimes be far more terrifying than imagination. Story 1. The Dyatlov Pass Incident. In February 1959, 9 highly experienced hikers began a winter expedition into the remote Ural Mountains of Russia. The group consisted of young, physically strong, and well-trained individuals who were familiar with harsh weather conditions and extreme survival situations. They were students and graduates with strong outdoor experience, and nothing about their journey initially suggested anything unusual beyond the normal dangers associated with mountain travel. However, when the group failed to return on schedule, concern quickly grew. A search team was organized to track their route and locate them. What rescuers eventually discovered became one of the most disturbing and mysterious cases in outdoor exploration history. The hiker's tent was found partially buried in snow and torn open from the inside. This detail immediately alarmed investigators because it suggested the group had tried to escape quickly, possibly in panic. Even more shocking were the footprints found near the tent. The tracks showed that several members of the group had fled into the freezing darkness barefoot or wearing only socks despite temperatures dropping below -30 degrees Celsius. Search teams later found some of the hikers' bodies near a tree line, where it appeared they had tried to start a fire in a desperate attempt to stay warm. Other bodies were discovered weeks later, buried deeper under heavy snow. But the most disturbing part of the discovery was the unusual injuries found on some of the victims. One hiker had suffered a crushed skull. Another had severe chest injuries comparable to those seen in major car crashes, yet there were no external wounds indicating an attack. One female hiker was found missing her tongue, which added another layer of mystery to the case. Investigators found no signs of other human footprints in the area, no weapons, and no clear evidence explaining what had happened. Over the years, many theories have been proposed. Some experts believe a sudden avalanche may have forced the group to flee their tent. Others have suggested secret military testing or natural phenomena such as infrasound waves that could cause panic and disorientation. Despite decades of research and investigation, no single explanation has been proven. To this day, no one knows exactly what caused 9 skilled hikers to abandon safety and run into deadly freezing conditions, making the Dyatlov Pass incident one of the world's most haunting unsolved mysteries. Story 2. The Hinterkaifeck Murders. The Farmhouse of Silence. In 1922, a shocking and deeply disturbing crime took place in a small rural farming community in Germany. 6 members of the Gruber family were found murdered on their isolated farm, in a case that would later become one of Europe's most haunting unsolved mysteries. What made this tragedy especially unsettling was not only the violence of the crime itself, but the strange and frightening events that reportedly happened both before and after the murders. In the days leading up to the attack, the family began noticing unusual activity around their home. They reported hearing unexplained footsteps coming from the attic late at night. The family's father also discovered mysterious footprints in the snow that led from a nearby forest directly to the house, but strangely, there were no footprints leading away. Around the same time, the family's maid suddenly quit her job, reportedly telling others she believed the house was haunted. Soon after, all 6 family members were brutally killed using a farming tool found on the property. What makes this case even more disturbing is what investigators later discovered. Evidence suggested that someone remained inside the farmhouse for several days after the murders. Neighbors later reported that animals on the farm had been fed, meals appeared to have been prepared, and smoke was seen rising from the chimney. This indicated that someone was living in the house while the victims' bodies were still inside. Despite investigations and theories over the decades, the killer was never identified. The motive remains unknown, and nearly 100 years later, the case still stands as one of the most chilling unsolved crimes in European history. Story 3. The Disappearance of the Sodder Children. The Fire That Made No Sense. On Christmas Eve 1945, a house fire destroyed the home of the Sodder family in West Virginia. 5 of the 10 children were believed to have died in the fire, but there was a terrifying problem. No bodies were ever found. The father, George Sodder, searched the ashes himself. He found household objects still recognizable, coins, appliances, but no bone fragments. Fire experts later claimed that house fires normally leave remains behind. Then strange clues started appearing. A ladder that was normally kept by the house was missing. The family's truck wouldn't start. Witnesses later claimed to have seen the missing children after the fire, including reports of them being seen in another state. The family spent decades believing their children were kidnapped, not killed. They even put up billboards offering rewards for information. No one ever proved what happened. Did the children die in the fire? Or were they taken that night? The mystery still haunts investigators and true crime historians. Story 4. The Toy Box Killer. Real-life psychological horror. In the late 1990s, law enforcement officers in New Mexico uncovered evidence connected to crimes so deeply disturbing that several investigators later reported needing psychological counseling to cope with what they had seen and heard during the case. The discovery revealed a level of planning and cruelty that shocked even experienced detectives. At the center of the investigation was a man who later became known publicly as the Toy Box Killer. Authorities discovered that he had constructed a soundproof trailer that he used to carry out his crimes. Inside, investigators found disturbing equipment designed to restrain and control victims. However, what affected many officers the most was not just the physical setup but an audio recording that the suspect allegedly played for victims. According to case reports, the recording calmly and systematically described what the victims would face. The tone of the tape was described as cold, controlled, and almost emotionless, which made it even more disturbing. Investigators later said that listening to parts of the recording was extremely difficult because of how detailed and calculated it sounded. Authorities believe there may have been multiple victims connected to the case. However, identifying everyone involved proved extremely challenging. Some victims were never identified, partly due to the passage of time and the effects of trauma. In some situations, survivors struggled to fully recall what had happened, making investigations even more complex. One of the most unsettling aspects of the case was how hidden everything was. From the outside, the trailer appeared ordinary and gave no obvious indication of what was happening inside. People living nearby reportedly had no idea that such crimes could be taking place so close to them. The case became a chilling example of how dangerous individuals can sometimes operate without attracting attention. It remains remembered as one of the most disturbing criminal cases in modern U.S. history, a reminder that in rare but horrifying situations, terrible crimes can exist quietly, hidden in everyday places without warning signs visible to the outside world. Story 5. The Lead Masks Case. The Men Who Died Waiting for Something. In 1966, a deeply mysterious and unsettling case emerged in Brazil when two electronics technicians were discovered dead on a hill near Rio de Janeiro. The men were found lying side by side, dressed formally in suits, which immediately struck investigators as unusual given the remote outdoor location. Near their bodies were water bottles, neatly kept notebooks, and a pair of strange homemade masks made from lead designed to cover their eyes. What made the case even more disturbing was the complete absence of violence. There were no wounds, no signs of a struggle, and no indication that anyone else had been present. Even more puzzling, medical examiners could not determine a clear cause of death. There was no evidence of poisoning, no detectable drugs in their systems, and nothing at the scene suggested how or why they had died. Inside the notebooks, investigators found cryptic notes. The writings included timelines, references to specific times of day, and instructions that mentioned waiting for a signal. The meaning of these notes has never been fully understood. Some investigators believe the men may have been conducting some kind of experiment or ritual. The lead masks themselves created even more questions. Experts speculated they might have been intended to protect the eyes from intense light, possibly from a scientific experiment or something the men expected to witness. Others believed the men were involved in spiritual or paranormal activities. Despite decades of investigation and speculation, the case remains unsolved. No one knows why these two men climbed the hill, why they wore formal suits, or what they were waiting for. Their deaths remain one of the most mysterious and disturbing unexplained cases in modern history. These stories are disturbing not just because of death or violence, but because of the unanswered questions. Humans are naturally afraid of the unknown, and each of these cases leaves gaps that may never be filled. Some mysteries fade with time, others become darker because the truth never comes out. The world is full of stories stranger, darker, and more disturbing than fiction. And somewhere out there, new mysteries are forming, waiting to be discovered. If history has taught us anything, it's this: sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that are completely real.